Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Hey, Faith Positive Nation, Dr. Joey Fawcett here with another episode of Faith Positive Radio. Thanks so much for listening today. I am always humbled when anyone besides my mom listens to these podcasts. And so you as a part of Faith Positive Nation are incredibly generous with your time. And all of our guests are incredibly generous with their time as well. You know, the whole Faith Positive Nation community gathers around these podcasts once a week just to discover what it is that God's doing among us as we give expression to our faith in the workplace. And, you know, faith takes expression in the workplace in many different ways. It's just a matter of how intentional you are about following Jesus and actually incarnating, being Jesus in the workplace. Where does that show up most? One of those places it shows up the most is in character. And I'm not talking about cartoon characters. I'm not talking about what kind of character are you. I'm not talking about building your character, you know, because what doesn't kill you does what? Right. So what I'm talking about is what you do when nobody's watching, right? That kind of character, what it is that drives you to do what you do. And particularly if you're in a place of leadership, those persons whom you seek to lead and influence, they are watching you constantly. They are listening to you constantly to discover what kind of character you're exhibiting. And you literally, by the kind of character that you exhibit, set the pace for the culture, for the company, for your team at least. And if you're in the C-suite, for the entire company. Today's guest is an absolute expert and a teacher in this whole area of leadership development and how it involves character. So you're going to want to listen to this episode more than once so that you can catch all the great nuggets that are going to come from my guest today. Dan Duckworth. CrucibleLife.com is the website. If you're doing something besides walking the dog, flip over to CrucibleLife.com, right? I tried it once, Dan, to flip over while I was walking the dog, and Bo the Wonder Dog's a great yellow lab, but he took off after a squirrel, and there went my phone. So I haven't tried that again. So if you're doing something other than walking the dog, unless your dog is just arthritic and slow, flip over to cruciblelife.com when you get a first chance. And that way you can see all the incredible resources that Dan Duckworth has right there. Faith Positive Nation, help me welcome to the podcast today, Dan Duckworth. Dan, welcome to Faith Positive Radio, my friend.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm excited for this.
Me too, man. Character. Lots of people talk about it, particularly as related to leaders, but how many people are really intentional about it? And then when you layer on top of that, trying to be a Jesus follower as a part of your character, sounds like we need some help in our country right now around this issue, Dan.
Well, let's talk about character for a minute because character, as we talk about, it's a little bit different than we're used to thinking about it. People put a positive attribution on character. If you have character, it's a good thing. If you don't have character, it's a bad thing. Yeah. But we're going to take that and we're going to say, actually, everybody has character. Character is what the word we use to talk about your mental model, the assumptions that you have about yourself, about other people, about your situation that you're in, about God, about your relationship with God. All of that creates a mental model, a map inside your head that governs your actions and choices when you're not thinking about it. And research shows that pretty much 95% of the time, we aren't consciously self-regulating what we do. We're actually just reacting based off of that model, that character that we have inside of our head. So the important thing is when your character matches reality and you're basing your decisions off of reality, you get great leadership results. But when your character is out of alignment with reality, when you're telling yourself a story about yourself and about the others and about the situation that just isn't true, you continue to base your behavior off of that model that doesn't match reality. That's when your situation really struggles and your leadership performance really suffers.
So there's a disconnect, and that's why the suffering. Alignment's always an interesting word. What I hear you suggesting is that our actions, our reactions, are guided by this mental map. So where does this mental map come from that we carry around in our heads, Dan?
Yeah, it actually comes from our past experiences and the way that we've chosen to narrate our past experiences. So let's just take a very, seemingly trite example. Somebody steps on your toe. You have an instant reaction. Either you scream or you cry or you whimper or you slug them in the face. Right? Or you want to do that.
Right.
But that's all based off of the last 10 times that somebody stepped on your toe and the meaning that you gave to those events. If you gave the meaning that every time someone steps on my toe, it's just accidental and these people are really benign and they have my best interests at heart and I can just forgive them and move on. Next time someone steps on your toe, that comes out of you. But if what you have in you is every time someone steps on my toe, they're out to get me and they're trying to take away what is mine and they're trying to injure me and they're actually, punishing me for something they think that I did, then someone steps on your toe could be the most innocent thing, but you load all of that into your reaction to them. Now that's a very trite example, but let's take that to the workplace and let's say that your boss does something that, quote, steps on your toe. It offends you. And how do you interact with that boss in that moment? Now, you're probably not going to slug him in the face, but you might want to because you're assuming your assumptions about yourself and about the boss and about the situation is that this person is out to harm me. Might be true. I don't know. If it's true that that person's out to harm you and you base your actions off of that assumption, you're going to get better results. If it's not true, then you're going to have a problem with your behavior not matching the reality of the situation.
That's where the disconnect comes in. So what I hear you describing, Dan, is the difference between a reaction and a response. So if I react, it's going to grow out of my story. If I respond, it's going to be interpreting whether or not that person stomped on my toe intentionally or whether they just accidentally stepped on it, right? So how do I change my mental map to be more in tune with the intentionality of the moment, the reality as you described it?
Well, the key thing you have to understand is that it's really not about becoming more conscientious. It's not about controlling what you can control. It's not about the space between every action and reaction that you get to choose in between. What it is about what you just said is transforming your character so that when you get in that situation the next time around, your default behavior matches reality. And so we talk about
default behavior matches reality. Man, that's a huge statement. That's something to write down right there, Faith Positive Nation. I want my default reaction to match reality. Man, what's the secret in the sauce of making that happen?
Well, it's about learning how to turn the 3 keys of leadership transformation.
Ooh. Hey, Dan, what are the 3 keys for leadership transformation? I got to know now. You're teasing me, man.
Well, before I get into that, let me tell you how I got to these, okay? Because I think it matters. Okay. So I started out as a nobody inside organizations, leading high profile, executive level, high impact change initiatives. I don't really know how, but when I got my first job, I was partnered with the CEO to be his assistant on a major change initiative that he was leading. And this kind of just happened time after time after time. So I was leading without any authority, without any title, without any recognition.
Wow.
I was learning how to lead transformation for people. And in my last experience, I had hired a leadership consultant to come in and do some work with me. And he started recruiting me and saying, I want you to come out and teach other people how to do this. And after about a year of resisting, because that wasn't my path, right? That wasn't what I had designed from the beginning. I finally said, okay, well, honest truth is I really don't have anything better going on. So I'll give this a try.
I don't have a better offer. So I'll
give it a
go.
It was the truth. And he's now one of my best friends. So like, it doesn't matter, but that's where I was at. And what I found was I was now standing in front of executives and managers of Fortune 500 company. And I didn't have any training in leadership. I didn't have any degrees or anything like that. And I would literally be studying the material like a half an hour before I would go on stage in front of these people. And I felt like a total imposter. But this is what I discovered. When I taught from the content, from the academics, the people were interested. But when I taught from my experiences as a leader, the people were moved. And they started coming up to me and saying things like this: where did you get those ideas to do what you did? And where did you get the courage to do that? Because I could never do that. And over time, I started to hear what they were really asking me, which was, can you teach me to do that too?
Wow. They wanted to know the secret in the sauce.
And so I had to ask myself, where did I get those ideas? I have no idea. Where did I get that courage? They just came. Where did that come from? It was my character. I didn't know that at the time.
Right.
But that sent me into a bunch of research and experimentation around what is really happening when leaders transform their performance, when they transform and get different results, what's really happening. And I found a whole stream of research that talks about character change. I didn't know what that was. So now that I know what character change is, then the question becomes, when does character transform? Well, the answer to that is usually during a crisis.
Yeah.
So then I said, well, so I'm supposed to ask these people to start a crisis in their life? Very fun job.
Yeah, really. Everybody would just love to see you coming. Here comes Dan. He's going to provoke a fight right here.
Exactly.
Cause a crisis. Well, I guess the good news is that most corporations, even on a good day, are in crisis of some sort.
That's true. If the leaders are willing to recognize that, as a coach, that's
right.
The biggest part of the battle, right?
Right. Every time.
So anyway, to get to your original question, this is where I discovered, I basically said, what's going on in people's minds when they're in crisis? And there's three mindsets, interrelated mindsets going on. The first, and these are the three keys. The first is they are learning for epiphanies, not for knowledge, not for skills, which is what we normally do. But in a crisis, or when you're transforming your character, you're learning for epiphanies, which are revelations about the way you really self you are, but the way you really are, and the way your situation really is. And when you get that flash and you see, wow, this is the way things really are, it comes with two things. Number one, I'm broken. Number two, I am full of potential.
Twin sides of the same coin, and yet what a paradox. I'm broken.
Exactly.
And yet look at all this potential.
And the researchers talk about there's a couple of decision points in this process. One is, are you going to go towards maladaptive reflection, which is, I'm broken, I'm terrible, I'm horrible, my mom was right, I'll never amount to anything. Right. I might as well just give up right now.
Victimology.
Versus adaptive reflection, which is, I'm broken, but I can learn, I can grow, I can overcome this.
Man, Dan, that's exactly where I would see God's story in Christ coming into play right there. Because we're all broken, but yet what's the story? What's the biblical narrative? Life comes out of death every single time, right? When we allow him to.
Yeah.
Gee, that's beautiful. I love it.
I like to talk about the story pattern, the story arc too of transformation as part of this. And in our church, we have an opportunity to get up and give, the lay members get to get up and give sermons occasionally. So my 17-year-old son was asked to get up and give a 5-minute talk.
Wow.
And he came to me and he said, what should I, I've been given this topic, like it's the night before, he's had 2 weeks to think about it, but it's the night before.
And you're like, son, why'd you wait 2 weeks?
We're literally driving home at 11 o'clock at night on Saturday when we're talking about this. And
timing's everything, right?
I said, Ben, forget about what the pastor asked you to talk about for a minute.
Yeah.
And I just want you to tell me your story from the last 2 weeks. He said, what do you mean? It's been a busy 2 weeks. I said, no, every story is about change. Every story is about how the hero of the story changed. And in particular, because you're telling a story to a worship congregation on Sunday who's coming there to learn about Jesus Christ and to learn what he can do for them. Your story is about how Jesus Christ changed you. over the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a chance to go back and look at, his story. He got up on Sunday, no notes, no outline. And he said, here's my story. At the beginning of this 2 weeks, I had become a waste. My summer is here. There's no school, no basketball camps, no nothing. I just found myself with time. And because of that, I started doing nothing and I started to waste away. But then my parents gave me some advice and some input that I was wasting away. And I realized the more I started to work, because we were giving him assignments around the house, like, you got to work. You can't just sit around. You got to work. Mm-hmm. He said, the more I started to do that, something started to change inside of me. Mm-hmm. He said, I realized now that the light of Christ was missing from my eyes.
Ooh.
But the light came back as I started to change. And then he goes on and tells the story, right? And it's all centered on this moment of choice that he had.
Wow, that's amazing that he phrased it that way, that the light came back. Man, 'cause that's what we're all looking for, because we all experience darkness, just like every organization's in crisis if the leader chooses to recognize it, right? Man, we're all looking for the light and fear that the light won't come back. What an amazing story been told.
Well, I'll tell you, you're a coach, you do this all the time, so now my teaching has moved. I've moved into doing virtual online leadership workshops.
Right.
And we're in the middle of one right now. And we're 2 weeks in, these are 4-week workshops. And every time I launch one of these, I'm filled with the self-doubt. Will this really work?
Yeah.
And then I get to this point and I go, of course it will work. People's lives are changing. And even though in the workshop itself, we aren't specifically, a ministry-based leadership program, the principles are all the same.
Yes.
And so people are turning the 3 keys, one of which we've now mentioned, and the light is coming back into their eyes.
I love it.
And that is the light of Christ.
That is the light of the world. Man, that's beautiful. So key 1 is to look for that epiphany to
Yes.
that will prompt that transformation. What's the second key, Dan?
And key number 2 is to experiment with new behavior, or as I like to say it more colloquial, do something different that makes you uncomfortable. So you have the epiphany. It shows you how you need to change. That desire starts to come. And then the second choice you have to make is, I'm going to act on that. I'm going to do it. Even though I'm not sure what the outcome will be. The reason I lock myself into my character behavior is because I know what the outcomes will be.
Right. Even if it's miserable, it's familiar.
Exactly. And the misery I know is better than the misery I don't know.
That's right. Because my comfort zone is what's most important. I want to create that stasis. I don't necessarily want to, Alexander the Great's army stopped conquering the world because they had marched off their map, right? We just don't want to march off the map. We want to stay where we are. And yet the reality, Dan Duckworth, is cruciblelife.com, by the way, is the website. The reality is that growth lies just beyond the edge of our comfort zones, right? So,
and in turning these 3 keys, you find the ideas and the courage to move into that growth zone. And then the third key is, once you've had your new experiences, you have to narrate them. You're going to narrate them anyway. Anytime anything meaningful happens to you or me, we narrate our experiences. The difference is we need to be intentional in how we narrate them. And so this is with my son and his story. It's not only did you change over the last 2 weeks, stop and think about what was Christ's role in that change. And if you're if you're in a leadership development experience, it's not only did you do something different and got a different outcome, but now you need to stop and tell the story in a way that sets you up for the next time. Remember, it's about rewiring that mental model that you've got.
A new mental map. Look, can I jump back to key 2 for just a second?
Yeah.
It takes a huge amount of courage to experiment with new behavior. Not only because I don't know the outcome, but I don't even know what the new behavior looks like, right? I don't know how to do this new. How do I go about finding preferred new behavior to experiment with?
I'll tell you what, my experience from the beginning, when I was leading change, as a nobody. I was always partnered with the executives. I found that they almost always knew what they wanted to do. It's inside of them, but they don't have the courage to act on it.
So it's a matter of courage rather than knowledge.
And it's also a matter of letting go of your ego and admitting that I maybe did things wrong in the past.
What? I have to admit I made mistakes? You got to be kidding. Man, that's a tall mountain for some people to climb, right?
But when your ideas for change are rooted in a genuine epiphany, then it comes with the force of action. Like, I see this. And now I want to do this. It's not my mom telling me, not my boss, not Joey. It's not anybody else's voice. It's my voice.
Right.
And it's my connection with God saying, I want to do this. And so I now have more courage. And then here's the interesting thing that I found, Joey, was when we started experimenting with this in our leadership programs, what we do is after the end of the year, we say, write the story of how you've changed. So they write 6, 7, 8 page story of the last year and how they've changed. Very moving, very meaningful stories. But I discovered something in reading their stories that shocked me because it wasn't in my plan. It was the value of the community. They would say things like, I had the epiphany, I had the idea, I knew what I needed to do, and I was at the point of acting, and I was going to turn back. But then I remembered everybody else was there too. I remembered my friends in the workshop, and I no longer felt alone. And I knew that if this didn't go well, I could come back and talk and narrate with my friends who get me. They understand what I'm trying to do.
Gotcha.
So I walked away from that first year, and I realized, wow, we got lucky that we were doing this in a community-based setting, and we always drive towards authentic community settings and stuff like that. But afterwards, we became so much more intentional about the community because that helps inspire you to turn the 3 keys, and it validates you. You're not alone. And that drives your courage way high.
Yeah, because it's a lot easier for us to join with others who are on a similar path than it is to blaze a trail ourselves.
Yeah.
So what I heard you say was that the epiphany contains within it both the passion and the purpose for the new behavior. So the passion, the courage to experiment, and then because the answer is within you, and you and I both know it's a spiritual process, right? So the Father is speaking to us saying this way. So you get that illumination, that insight that comes through revelation as a part of that epiphany that here's the new behavior, right? And so that's how I begin to experiment with new behavior. Now connect that with with that third key for us once again.
Well, again, it's narrating your new experiences. You're going to do that anyway. Anytime something meaningful happens to you, it's part of our human psychology. We have to make sense of it.
That's where my mental map begins to morph.
That's right. And you can choose to do that with your friends, but your friends actually don't always have your best interest at heart.
No, they want you to stay the same, basically,
Exactly.
because you attracted them based on a certain sets of behavior. All of you share this common mental map, or most of you do. So your friends are going to push back against your change?
Yeah, they're going to say things like, no, you're doing just fine. No, that was all her fault. It's not yours. You don't need to change. You don't need to feel bad.
Oh my God, Dan Duckworth, am I going to have to delete some people as friends?
No, just
Unfriend
when you want life-changing conversation, you got to do some work. And what we say is you got to find the right people. You got to put them in the right mindset, and you got to have the right conversation.
But that could include unfriending some people.
It could.
You know, if those are toxic relationships, at least toxic to this new epiphany and this new behavior that I've got. In order to write that new narrative, I might have to unfriend some people.
That's for sure.
Absolutely fascinating. CrucibleLife.com is the website for Dan Duckworth and all this amazing secret and sauce, the 3 keys to you becoming what's really a person of character and a leader of character within. Dan, I'm assuming this works not only at work, but it works at home, works every other place as well, right?
Yeah. One of the huge ahas, we were doing this for business, and we found that when people's character changes, they would come to us and say, "Oh my goodness, you saved my marriage."
Oh, wow.
We say, what are you talking about? And then somebody else would come and say, "Oh my gosh, I just escaped a toxic marriage after 30 years of abuse. And I just quit smoking after 40 years," or what, all these things.
Wow.
And we realized, wow, when you change character, you not only get the engagement and the followership and the ROI and the sales and the all the stuff you need at the business place,
Mm-hmm.
but you're changing your performance across every aspect of your life.
Because it's an artificial conversation, really, to talk about personal and professional, because we're all whole people, aren't we?
That's right.
So that transformation cross channels from one to the other. That's absolutely beautiful. Dan Duckworth is my guest on this episode of Faith Positive Radio. Dan, tell us what we're going to see and experience when we go to cruciblelife.com.
Well, we have a community there. That's what we call the Crucible Life community. The only way to join our community, which is where we're practicing turning the three keys together, is to join one of our transformational workshops. It's kind of like the front door. Okay. And the reason for that is because we need you to be the right person in the right mindset, having the right conversation. So we don't let anybody in unless they've had that experience with turning the three keys.
Workshop. Right. Makes perfect sense.
So these are 1 month long virtual flexible workshops where we just spend a couple hours a week and we turn the three keys together. It's what we do. In our real worlds, we're turning the three keys and then we're narrating with each other as we go through the 1 month experience. And so if they show up there, that's what they'll find. They can also join a newsletter list, or I wrote a book recently for the current workshop that we're in called Stop Asking Why. It's a book about purpose. They could also find that as well.
Okay, cool. Stop Asking Why. Cruciblelife.com is Dan Duckworth's website. If you're where you can't write that down or flip over to it on your phone right now, Chuck's put it on Dan's page at our website where you may be listening or watching, and that's getpositive.today. Dan, Faith Positive Nation always wants to know from our guest about a favorite Bible verse or Bible passage. What's yours, my man?
Well, the one that's on my mind today comes from Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And of course, right before that, the Savior is talking about clothing and drink and shelter and food, the necessities of life. And I think that we could also expand that a little bit beyond just the basic necessities of life. You know, he says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and basically anything you need will be added to you. And that's a real witness that I have, because we once upon a time sold our house and we moved our 6 kids into an RV travel trailer, and we stripped ourselves of all the frivolities of life, including the expectations of society. And we discovered for ourselves that we were given everything we needed.
Wow.
And sometimes getting rid of everything you want and allowing yourself to live just in what you need is what is an experience that transforms you. And you get to know God in very different ways.
I suspect you got more than you needed, that you got some things that you would have wanted, but your mental map changed and you got a lot more than you needed, some things that were more important that you wanted.
Yes. Wow.
Well, we talked about courage to experiment with new behavior. I'm thinking 6 kids in an RV travel trailer would certainly require a lot of courage. Dan Duckworth is my guest today on Faith Positive Radio. Cruciblelife.com is where you want to go right now to discover how you can sign up for these workshops and join the amazing Crucible Life communities so that your character can transform and you can be the leader that God intends for you to be. Dan, thanks so much for the gift of your time, your wisdom today. Pray God's blessings on you, your amazing wife, and those 7 great kids. Man, that's great.
And good luck to you. You're doing great work.
Hey, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.